the veils of perception that prevent us from recognizing the open awareness that is always here. We could say the light of beingness, the light of consciousness that is always here as the backdrop and the foreground. Yeah, it's not locatable as back or front, but let's call it the backdrop of all experience, the ground of all experience. The veils of perception are what we call the ego identity. The ego identity, or the ego structure, is where we get lost in our experience. If we can understand what that ego mechanism is, then it comes undone. So again, the idea that we must get rid of ego because it's some kind of characteristic of the personality or of the self that is unsavory, unspiritual, and that we must get rid of it. And by getting rid of it, we'll become more perfect spiritual beings or more compassionate or whatever. This is also erroneous. The ego self is simply a process made up of how we see things, how we see our experience. When I say see, I mean how we relate to our experience. Everything in life, from at least birth to death, is an experience. You can't say you've never experienced. Everything is an experience, whether it's a thought, a feeling, a sensation, an emotion, every energy, every circumstance, every interaction is experienced. Yeah? So that's what I mean by how we see things, how we experience. Because how we experience things, it's not a simple, straightforward, pure experience. It is when you're newborn, but as we grow up from that newborn state, we start to label our experience, yeah, conceptualize, put it into categories based on what's good, what's bad, what's welcome, what's unwelcome, what's permissible, what's not permissible. Yeah, we call this conditioning. Some of that is valuable. Some of that categorization is valuable, as when you put something in your mouth that is poisonous and it's bitter and you spit it out. So you put that in that category. Don't touch it again. That's not welcome. And then something that's sweet and nourishing, then that's welcome. That's valuable because it's functional. But on a psychological level, the majority of that categorization is not valuable. It simply creates the ego structure of defense, attack, armoring, both on the level of mental armoring, where we take sides, we take positions, we create opinions, and then we are very fixed in that. And that creates defense and attack on a mental level, intellectual level, with others and with the world. That armoring gets created in our heart, where we defend against being hurt or feeling vulnerable or crying or showing our emotions or intimacy, and so on and so on. It creates armoring in the body, so there's tension, there's closure, and so on, stagnation, and so on. So on all levels of the human experience, this psychological division that goes on through labeling creates interference with our experience. So we defend against it. We push away, or we numb or suppress, or we try to grasp it and hold on to it and take ownership of it, and hold on to that experience forever and carry it into the future, when life actually is a river that flows and can't be controlled in that way in terms of our experience. So this process of interpretation and interference is what creates the ego structure. And this creates veils of perception, which essentially means that we don't see clearly, we don't experience clearly, purely, without these overlays. And in a nutshell, we could say that is getting lost in your experience. Lost in the sense that your identity is derived from that experience. I am sad, I am happy, I am scared, I am successful, I'm a failure, I'm a this, I'm a that. Yeah? The whole of our experience tends to be a description of our experience from which we derive our identity. The description of the experience prevents us from being totally intimate and just experiencing purely our experience. It creates a separation from it when we're constantly describing and narrating our experience and categorizing it, interpreting it. And then the true identity, which is what we seek as spiritual seekers, who am I? The true identity, which is the foundation of freedom, gets obscured because it's totally enmeshed in I am this or I am that. I am this or I am that. Yeah? So you are lost in the content of experience. And this is taken as normal in the unexamined sense. Yeah? For the majority of human beings, this process that I'm attempting to describe here is taken for granted. It's not even known that that's what's happening. So most people are just completely lost in the content of their experience. This is called drama. This is called problems. This is called, striving for something, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah. So what we are doing here, I hope, is attempting to wake up out of that dream of being lost in the content of experience and discover the freedom that's already here.